On a cold January morning in a quiet Massachusetts town, a respected Boston cop was found dead in the snow, and his girlfriend, Karen Reed, was accused of killing him with her SUV. But what started as a tragic accident spiraled into something much darker and bigger. Allegations of a police cover up, missing evidence, and a nation divided by the question: was Karen Reed a killer or a scapegoat? Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of A Brush with Death. I'm your host, Miss Casey Hanalei, and in this series, I sit down, I tell you a true crime story, and I make you a pretty picture at the same time. Now, sometimes it's from painting it, sometimes I draw it, sometimes I haven't really tried anything else, but we'll see. Maybe I'll sculpt next, who knows. Anyways, if you love art and you love true crime, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and like and comment this video. That way you will never miss one of my terrible but hopefully inspirational stories. So before we get into the case today, I like to introduce my special guest, which I'm pretty sure I've introduced to you before, but it is my Comic-Con piece that I did of Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman a few years ago. And this was done digitally and printed on canvas. So she looks beautiful today. Hello, Michelle. All right, so who are we talking about today? We are talking about Miss Karen Reed. Huge case in the news the last few months, the last year, really. Lots to go over. I don't have, all the details, obviously, but this is probably going to be a long one. So buckle up, kitty cats, and let's get into this case. Okay, who is Karen Reed? She was 41 years old at the time of the incident, and she is from Mansfield, Massachusetts. Now, who here is from Massachusetts? Hey, my Massachusetts friends. I used to go up to Massachusetts all the time to visit my cousins up there, so shout out to Brandon and Haley. Hi guys, if you're watching, I love you, miss you, bye. Anyways, so Karen Reed is from Massachusetts. She was a former financial analyst and adjunct professor, so very smart. She earned her MBA at Bentley University, and she's known to be very intelligent, career-driven, and private, but had no criminal history or prior criminal history. Friends described Karen as very kind, responsible, and not someone prone to violence. So not a lot of, violent tendencies on Karen's side. And we'll see that too on John's side, the victim in this case. So John O'Keefe, who was 46 at the time of his death, he was raised in Braintree, Massachusetts, also from Massachusetts. And he was a 16-year veteran of the Boston Police Department, and he was currently in a detective role in Boston PD's K-9 unit. So both very career-driven individuals, very smart, very going somewhere, right? John was a highly respected officer with a solid reputation in the force. He had legal guardianship of his late sister's two young children after her death in 2013, and friends described him as a very devoted uncle dad, which I think is so cute. He was described as being very generous, very loyal, and deeply committed to both his family and his job. He had been dating Karen Reed for about 2 years at the time of his death, and there's kind of mixed reviews about their relationship. Some accounts say that their relationship had become very rocky at the time of his death, and that there was tension in the weeks following up to it. But other people said that, it was a very serious long-term relationship, and, issues were emerging, but there was a lot of love in the relationship as well. So anyway, so their relationship was described as very serious and long-term, and issues kind of started to arise around 2021 Friends reportedly noticed arguments and signs of jealousy and or distrust in the relationship. So, not the most solid account of their relation. Everyone say hi to Jasper. Hi, Jas. He's probably going to take a nap up there. Anyways, so the relationship, some said that it was really strong and just, like every other couple, had arguments and stuff, but others said that there was trouble emerging and was kind of on a rocky path at the time. So, kind of a mixed bag, and I'm not really sure which way to lean and who to believe. So, the night of the incident, it was January 30th, 2022. Karen Reed and her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, attended a gathering at a fellow officer, Brian Albert's home in Canton, Massachusetts. Canton, there's a Canton in Ohio as well, but this is Canton, Massachusetts. Reed leaves the house and returns to John's home around 12:36 a.m. This is proven by her phone hooking up to the Wi-Fi at his house. So she, maybe had enough and left the party around midnight, and she got back to his place around 12:30. She then sent a message expressing her frustration that he hadn't returned yet, and kept trying to call him and text him, and she didn't really get any answers. So around 1:18 a.m., so this is the morning of the 31st, she calls one more time before falling asleep next to one of John's nieces who he had full custody of. So, 5 a.m. rolls around. It's around 5:30 a.m. of January 31st, 2022, and John O'Keefe still is not home. So Karen gets up and starts driving around looking for him. And, she's looking for him alongside of a friend of hers, John McCabe and Carrie Roberts. They're searching for John, and they get back to the friend's house that the party was at, and they discover his body around 6 a.m. frozen in the snow. So they immediately call 911 around 6:07 a.m. and at 6:30 a.m. Karen speaks to her father, and apparently she had some suicidal tendencies or suicidal intent. She was very, very upset with herself. And, a lot of her friends, along with her, were speculating what happened. And she thought maybe that she had hit him with her car on accident, right? So the paramedics get there, and around 8 a.m. that morning, John O'Keefe is pronounced dead at the scene. His autopsy finds that he died from blunt force trauma and hypothermia. So he did not die right away. If he was hit by the car, he died in the snow, basically, from the trauma and also exposure to the elements. Just a really horrible way to die, but I guess I hope that he was unconscious at the time and hopefully didn't feel anything. February 1st, 2022, this is when Karen Reed is arrested and charged with manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, and leaving the scene of a crime. She pleads not guilty and is released on approximately $80,000 bond. So investigators are, investigating this case, and they're gathering all their evidence. And June 9th, 2022, a grand jury indicted Karen Reed on second-degree murder, motor vehicle manslaughter, and leaving the scene of a crime. And her bail is set at $100,000. So yeah, the media circus pretty much starts right here. There's a lot of coverage in the media and then also social media as well. This was huge on TikTok and YouTube, and you know, you probably saw it. If you didn't, then I don't know. Maybe you don't have social media. I don't know. Good for you, right? But anyway, so that was June when she's indicted. October of that year, 2023, blogger Aiden Turtleboy Kearney is arrested for allegedly witness intimidation over his coverage and support of Reed. So I believe he was on TikTok. So this can get crazy, guys. And if you are a fellow true crime TikToker, blogger, YouTuber, maybe have this as a warning. Make sure that you aren't inhibiting an investigation. Make sure you are not intimidating witnesses. Make sure you are, just non-biased, hopefully non-biased. And if it's after the fact, then you can have your opinion. I don't care. But if it's, during a trial or leading up to a trial, maybe be a little careful. We will go further into this point as well a little later, but in December of 2023, this is when the U.S. Attorney opens an inquiry into the case, and the Massachusetts lead investigator, Michael Proctor, is being investigated for just, being sleazy. So there is so much drama surrounding this case on all sides, right? Karen had the odds stacked against her, and also, too, there was a lot of misconduct, it looked like, on the Boston PD side as well. So just getting really, really messy here. So April 16th, 2024, this is when the first trial starts. Yes, there is a second. So this is when the first murder trial begins. There are large protests going on, so buffer zones are established in order to keep the peace and make sure that everyone is staying safe. So this is how big this case was. People were just upset on all sides. So one piece, there's two major pieces of evidence that I want to talk about, and one piece of evidence is the damage to Karen's SUV. So one thing that was covered and examined by the forensic scientist was Maureen Hartnett, who is the forensic scientist. She said there was a dent in the trunk, scratches on the rear bumper, and a broken right taillight. State troopers found red and clear taillight shards near where John O'Keefe was discovered, and microscopic fragments were found on his clothing. There was also DNA findings. Hair on the SUV bumper matched John's DNA with high certainty. So the defense argued that the shards were discovered late in the day. They weren't discovered until 5:30 p.m. of that day. Remember, John's body was discovered around 6 a.m. of that day. So why did it take them so long to discover those pieces? It is Massachusetts in the middle of the winter, so there's lots of snow on the ground. He was found covered in snow, so maybe the elements, but again, they weren't able to find those items until later, which raised suspicions that they may have been planted. Reconstruction experts argued that the damage wasn't consistent with a pedestrian impact on the SUV, and the vehicle damage could align with backing into another car. So they didn't think that it lined up with his injuries, and it just didn't make a lot of sense. There wasn't a lot of blood found at the scene from someone who was allegedly hit by a car and died from that impact. There wasn't really anything there. Juror commentary and also Reddit sleuths, many users analyzed video stills and forensic details, alleging that the taillight pieces were added post-seizure. So again, supporting the defense's argument that maybe these were planted. So that's the one piece of evidence. And then the other piece of evidence I find really interesting is the Google search, the how long to die in the cold Google search. So witness testimony, Jennifer McCabe, remember she was one of the friends that was out looking for John with Karen. She searched the phrase, how long to die in the cold, on her phone the morning of the discovery. The defense claimed that the timestamp was 2:27 a.m. before the body was found, suggesting premeditation or foreknowledge. How did she know John was there, and why would she look up that if they didn't even know where he was, right? Doesn't make a lot of sense. The prosecution's response was that the mobile forensic experts argued that the timestamp reflected the time that the tab was opened, not the time that the Google search was made, right? So when you're on your phone, right, you can open a tab on your, browser, Safari or whatever you use. And then, so what they're saying is she opened up the browser at 2:30, but then made the actual search around 6:30. So placing the time around 6:30 a.m. after the discovery of John's body. So the defense was trying to use it to kind of get the heat off of Karen, right? So why was her friend searching for that when Karen didn't even know where John was? And then the prosecution was trying to say, no, she just opened the tab at that time. It wasn't until later, after his body was discovered, that this search was actually made. So sorry guys, I'm kind of losing my voice for some reason. I don't know why. I went to a few concerts this weekend, so maybe I was just too much screaming, right? So anyway, so June 10th, 2024, this is when Michael Proctor, remember the lead investigator that's under investigation with the FBI, he admits to sexist, derogatory texts and faces an internal investigation at this time. That's when all that started. And then Karen Reed, she maintained her innocence through the whole thing from day one. She stated that she thought she was being framed. She believed she was the scapegoat for a death that occurred inside of the actual house, and somehow John passed away and they placed him in the yard to frame Karen. Her legal team argues that law enforcement and prosecutors colluded to protect fellow officers and preserve department's image, and that they planted evidence. She also claimed that they ruined her life, which, if that's all true, and it was this huge conspiracy to cover up something, right? They ruined her life. In court and via supporters, Reed had said she was villainized in the media from the beginning, harassed and driven to a mental breakdown. Like I stated earlier, she did have suicidal tendencies from the very beginning. So, were they trying to get her to do something? I don't know. Her attorneys have compared the case to a blue wall of silence scenarios where police protect their own. And sometimes you see these types of cases too, and there's no supporting evidence, but there is that FBI investigation on the lead investigator, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but he called Karen a lot of nasty, nasty things, a lot of very biased things, for someone who should be presumed innocent until proven guilty, right? So July 2nd, 2024, this is when the jury reports that they are deadlocked twice, and a mistrial is declared July 2nd. Proctor, the guy, Michael Proctor, that was being investigated, he is also fired the same day, which probably well deserved. So August 23rd, 2024, John O'Keefe's family does file a wrongful death lawsuit against Reed and the local bars. The civil case is stayed pending the the next trial's outcome, right? So, and I think it's still pending, to be honest. So March 2025, so just a few months ago, a federal judge denied Karen Reed's attempt to dismiss her charges, and the defense and prosecution prep for retrial. So there is a second trial, April 1st, 2025. This is when the retrial begins. Trooper Connor Keefe and Lieutenant Kevin O'Hara reaffirmed that shards were found in the deep snow at the scene. Forensic scientist Christina Hanley, the one from the first trial, confirmed microscopic plastic on O'Keefe's clothing, matching the same material on the SUV's fragments. But she did acknowledge that it might share characteristics with other sources. So that tells me that they aren't 100% sure that these are consistent. They're just similar. Is that a strong case? I don't know. So the defense rebuttal was they studied the dash cam footage and forensic details, arguing that the taillight pieces did not match the timing or the vehicle damage either, like they stated in the first trial. They re-emphasized gaps in crime scene security and also evidence collection timing as well. So they were arguing that there was a lot of mishandling of evidence, and some of that evidence wasn't even collected until hours later, and many people were walking through that crime scene in and out. New expert evidence, so Jessica Hyde, who testified, she testified that the search, that How Long to Die in the Snow search, occurred at 6:30 a.m., reinforcing the defense's timeline, actually, and discrediting the early timestamp theory. But the Carrie Roberts, who was a witness, who initially recalled hearing Karen ask the question, later admitted that she did not hear that at all, actually. And that undermined the prosecution's credibility, like, severely as well. So there's a lot of, like, tit for tat going on, and he said, she said kind of things. But it looks like the defense has a really strong case against the prosecution. So, anyways, I'll keep my opinions to myself until the very end, right? But anyway, so June 18th, 2025, Karen Reed is acquitted of murder, manslaughter, and the hit and run conviction. She was only convicted under operating under the influence and given 1 year probation. So this just happened like literally weeks ago, where she was acquitted. There's been so much coverage about the first trial, the retrial. Have you guys who have you been listening to, I guess? Like, have you been looking at the news? Have you been looking at YouTubers? Have you been TikTok? Who have you been paying attention to? I've been trying to kind of like get a well-rounded view of everything going on, but obviously, it's just such a high-profile case that there was just so much information that I had to kind of like whittle it down to the bare bones. So I'm sorry about that. But if you want to know more about this case, there's plenty of options out there. I think there's like Netflix documentaries. There's stuff on YouTube everywhere, and TikTok, and anything that you could ever want about this case is online right now. So go ahead and stream your heart out, I guess. So in late June of 2025, so just last month, a jury member, the foreman, recommended to the FBI that they reopen the investigation, citing that there was a ton of gaps and potential misconduct within the investigation. So not sure where that's at, if that's going to be reopened or not. And then June 27th, so just a few days ago, Karen Reed signed a deal for a scripted adaptation of her story with her attorney and seeks a book deal. So not sure how I feel about that. I guess, if she really was framed and she really is innocent, then yeah, like they tried to ruin her life. Why not, make some money off of it? But If she's not innocent, then that doesn't rub me the right way. Anyways, and then that civil lawsuit, the one John O'Keefe's family started against Karen and the local bars, is still pending. So maybe I'll do a follow-up on that, see how that goes. Maybe they'll settle out of court. If she makes her book deal, maybe she'll be, rolling, right? So next I want to get into kind of it's not really like conspiracies, but like the definite gaps in this case, right, guys? There's so much dirty water in this case, right? Maybe dirty snow is what I should have said. But anyway, so the obvious, like, possible law enforcement cover-up is definitely something I want to talk about. So the theory is that John O'Keefe was not killed by Reed and her SUV, but was beaten inside of Brian Albert's house, and his body was then planted outside to frame her. What do you guys think about this? Reed's defense argued that O'Keefe was let into Albert's house, the Albert house, got into an altercation, and then may have been attacked by their dog, Brian Albert's German Shepherd, Chloe, and then dumped in the snow. Forensic pathologist Dr. Lindsay Thomas testified that O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with being hit by a car, something that we mentioned earlier, and they were more consistent with blunt force trauma and a dog mauling. So I don't think he was ever tested for, and I think I'll get into it in a little bit, but there wasn't a lot of testing on his body for a dog mauling or like DNA testing or anything. Like, that's stuff that you can do. You can like test for doggy DNA. Bingo, dino DNA. That's what I'm sorry. Anyways. So there was also allegations of tampered evidence, particularly the taillight fragments conveniently found by investigators hours and even days later. There was also a lack of blood at the supposed impact site. Again, like I said earlier, like for someone who died supposedly of blunt force trauma from a car hit, there was no blood anywhere. I mean, you're just lying in the snow. Again, like, it was snow, right? But you would have been able to tell if he had been thrown clear across the yard and landed in the snow without anyone noticing. Like, there would have been blood there. O'Keefe's injuries not clearly matching the vehicle impact theory, right? So that's what I just said. Anyways, the dog attack theory I think is very interesting. So the theory is that he was attacked by Chloe, right? And this was possibly after he had been assaulted by someone or somebodies in the Albert house. So there was wounds on O'Keefe's arms that were consistent with canine bites. But again, no testing was done for animal DNA or fur or saliva or anything like that, which doesn't really make sense to me. The family had previously said that Chloe was friendly, but the defense argued that she was a trained guard dog. Now, a dog can be both. Now, let's be fair. They can be friendly, but they can also be ruthless, right? Especially when it comes to their family. So why there was no testing done, especially when it came to the dog, I'm not really sure why. Was John O'Keefe's body cremated? Because I'm wondering, is there any testing they can do now? Anyways. Maybe if they reopen the case, maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a chance that we can test something, right? There was also a lot of suspicious behavior from the witnesses. No crap. Friends who were with Reed that night, especially Jennifer McCabe, remember the one who accused Karen of, admitting that, oh, I hit him with my car and blah, 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 and then later took it back, like, she's the one that made the search for how long to die in the cold. people are suspicious of her and think that maybe she was involved in the cover-up as well. She allegedly Googled how long to die in the cold before O'Keefe's body was discovered. However, like we talked about earlier, the evidence shows that the tab was opened at 2:30, but the search wasn't made until around 6:30, right? So, but who knows? Technology is not one of my like strong suits, so I have no idea how they can tell, if they can tell, but there's that. And then Reed allegedly said, "I hit him," or "I think I hit him," but the defense argues that this was taken out of context and it was her just simply repeating what others had said after they found his body. So I think it was a situation where they were all panicking or all just really upset, right? And just thinking about what could have happened. And, if Karen was innocent and there's possibility that she could have hit him with her car unbeknownst to her, I might have said the same thing. Like, oh my, did I hit him? Oh my gosh. Like, is that a possibility? Like, what's he doing in the snow? Like, what? So I can see it both ways, to be honest. There's also, again, an investigation going on for police and prosecutor misconduct, right? So the theory is that the case was mishandled and possibly manipulated by Massachusetts State Police to protect their own. Remember the blue wall of silence? Lead investigator Michael Proctor, who was later fired, was found to have sent misogynistic and offensive text messages about Karen Reed, calling her names like, now, these are quotes, right? This is not my words. I usually try to keep it like PG-13, right? He texted the words crazy bitch and whack job. The defense accused Proctor of planting taillight evidence and manipulating the timeline to match a prosecution narrative. Alleged lack of a forensic investigation inside the Albert home as well. Again, like the doggy DNA wasn't tested. There was barely any crime scene investigation done inside the house as well. Why wasn't the home treated as a crime scene? It doesn't make any sense. Vehicle damage and glass fragments were not photographed either, and there was just mishandling everywhere going on. The prosecution expert said that the taillight glass from the SUV matched debris near O'Keefe's body, but the defense expert said some of that debris appeared later, raising suspicions. There was also blood inside the car, but it was very, very limited and not consistent with a fatal strike per the defense. So it says inside the car, but I'm assuming it's like inside the parts of the car, right? So I don't think it was actually in the interior, but I didn't look it up, so don't quote me on that. So with this case, I don't know. I think she's innocent. I think that there's a strong possibility that this was a cover-up. It seems very staged, and the fact that there is little to no investigation elsewhere, right, is very strong. I think it really strongly supports Karen's case, right? And luckily she was found acquitted, right? I think I would feel a certain type of way if she was found guilty, just because there is so much unknown, right? But what do you guys think? Do you think that she's innocent, or do you think that she did hit him and this is all, she was just acquitted of murder? I don't know. Also, too, I think if she did hit him, I think it was an accident as well. Does she deserve to be convicted of murder? What do you guys think? Do you think that this was all a cover-up, or do you think that Karen Reed really did kill John O'Keefe? I will say too, so I watched a lot of the coverage of this case as well, and I will say that Karen doesn't strike me as a very likable person. She came off in the trial, and maybe you feel differently about it, but she came off in the trial as very cold and honestly, like, she didn't care that something happened. Like, she was focused on herself, which, again, like, if you're in that situation, you don't know how you're going to react in that situation, right? If you're backed into a corner and you really didn't do anything wrong, how are you going to react? I don't know. I don't know how I would react. But she didn't really do herself a lot of favors on this, you know, during the trial or anything like that. So, but again, I think she's innocent. I think, or at least she didn't do it on purpose, if she did do anything. But I honestly think she didn't hit him at all. I think it's consistent with a beating and possibly a dog mauling, but maybe we'll never know. I'm not sure. So, like always, I like to end with a quote, hopefully an inspirational quote that will inspire you to move on from this case and learn something from it, right? So, this quote is from George Orwell. In a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. This resonates deeply with this case's narrative. A woman claiming to be framed, a police force accused of covering for its own, and public trust being shattered. Lots of themes of truth versus power, exposure versus silence, and the cost of speaking up when institutions, you know, are in control and they control the narrative, right? So I hope that you are inspired to tell the truth, even in the hardest of circumstances, right? Just because it's the right thing to do, right? And even if it seemingly does not work out for you in the end, by telling the truth, at least you can lay your head down and sleep well at night because you did the right thing, right? So it's always about doing the next right thing, guys, like I always say. All right, so with that, so today's piece is very different from what I usually do. Oh, and it's really dark. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, it's really pretty. So this is a technique I haven't used in 15 years, 13, since college, I think. So what you do, and you probably saw in the video, what you do is you cover everything in charcoal and then you erase what you want the light to hit. So this is a dove in a cage, and it's very symbolic, right? Like I always do. And I wanted to symbolize like the freedom of truth being contained by this system that is meant to protect, right? So in Karen's case, right, I hope she was telling the truth when she said that she was innocent, right? And a system meant to protect her really tried to take her out, right? So this is kind of representative of that. And to like, I hope in the end, you know, if Karen didn't do it, you know, John O'Keefe also gets justice, right? Because, you know, if we put the wrong person behind bars, that's not justice for John either. So I hope that eventually, you know, they do reopen the case and maybe relook into the actual investigation as well. And maybe we will eventually find John O'Keefe's real killer, if it wasn't Karen Reed, right? So, always in pursuit of real justice and the truth. I hope that that inspires you, guys. No, this was a dark one. But I hope it inspires you to always tell the truth and, you know, hopefully be a good person out there, right? Well, I love you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this case as much as I love putting them together. Don't forget to subscribe and like and comment this video if you want to see more. And I hope that I see you in the next one, guys. Be kind, be a good person, and I will see you later. Divided by question. What? I'm filming. This is a serious moment, Jasper. Do you want to say hi? Come here. Come here. Oh, hi. You want to say hi to the camera? Oh, yeah. Wait, Jasper. I just got my teethies cleaned. All right, honey. Mommy's working. Okay, you need to go. I love you. I know. I know. I know, honey. Why don't you go lay down? Go lay down. Or you want to lay down here? Or up here? Here. Lay down. No, lay down. I know, you love me. I know. He's a rescue. He has abandonment issues. You can be in here, but you need to be quiet.